Good afternoon, good afternoon, good afternoon. Welcome to Focus on Liberia, FOL Marketplace. I'm your co-host Gabriel Carter. On the marketplace, we talk everything finance and economics. Last week we talked about the budget. This week we're going a little in depth into the budget as we promised last week. Uh, Welcome my co-host, Mr. Alex Cuffy. Alex, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine, Gabriel. I'm back in my comfort zone in the Dallas area. Last week I was in Houston. I was visiting a business partner. We're stretching Allen Bernard International, collaborating with other guys. So I was out there. So I just went with my overnight bag. That is why now I'm in my comfort zone. So I'm in my
Nice.
in
I know. I
jacket.
see you ready. You look fired up already. Ready
Yeah,
in the
yeah, I'm
costume.
fired up.
I saw you. Last week I came out dressed. And then I saw you. I said, when I saw myself, I said, this guy just came ready today. So I'm glad you're ready. I'm glad you're fired up. As I said earlier, we talked about the budget last week. It was just pretty much the introduction of the show. This week, today's segment, we're going to go, in detail of the process. What is the budget? What makes the components of the budget? Even details of it. Like, usually when the budget come out, we just see what goes into it. We just see the outcome. But this segment, we want to just go into the process of how it's made. Who gets to vote on it, how the process is, and everything else that goes into the making of the budget before we get to see it. So I think this will be a interesting, very knowledgeable segment, which is exactly what we want to do on the show. We want to talk, finance, economics, but in the process, we want to make sure that people are educated. You want to learn something. We're here to learn. We're not saying that we're the expert. We're learning from each other. We're learning from the audience as well. So wherever you are this afternoon, share the show, invite somebody. It's only about an hour or just over an hour. And again, I'm glad to be here. Glad to have Alex with me. And we hope, that it will become a very interactive show. We like questions, challenges on things that we get wrong. And we will push back on it if we think you don't have them right. It's against, as we said, it's a learning process. So we're all here to learn. So sit with us for an hour, and we look forward to having a fruitful discussion. Alex.
Yes, sir. So once again, this is Alex Cuffy, the managing consultant for Allen Bernard International. And Allen Bernard International is a consulting firm based out of Texas and Minnesota.
Hmm.
But we work with clients throughout the 50 states of the United States of America. We provide business support services or business development establishment services, such as registering your business, registering your nonprofit, your medical business, healthcare business, and things like that. We advise people on the different choices on whether to do incorporated business or to do an LLC. We also provide backup accounting and tax services. We provide taxation services for individuals and businesses as well. We do accounting services for businesses. We do dive into a little bit of financial planning, giving people financial advisory on how to invest their money and things like that. And our biggest part is, and in fact, what led us into Texas is our anti-money laundering services, where we're working with the financial system on this side, trying to protect the financial system from being misused. So that is what we are. So again, we will, as Gabriel laid it out, and we will be moving into that. Back to you, Gabriel.
Gabriel, you are muted, please.
Texas, Texas is a financial hub. As I was saying, Texas is a financial hub. I'm glad. I think you're very well situated. Your organization, your company is very well situated. It's one of the up and coming state. Um, so I think you're very well situated in a good place to take advantage of that. But without further ado, as we're here today to discuss the budget. So the question that we have in the Liberia national budget, right? Just a basic guide to the processes of the budget. So in that sense, we want to define what is the national budget, right? Uh, what makes up the national budget? What makes up what is the national budget? So from my understanding of the budget, the way I understand it is pretty much a look of a point in time, a look of a point in time. So when I mean a look of a point in time is a financial planning to whether it's for individual or a company or organization, it keeps you honest of how you plan your finances, your revenues that come in, your or income, if you will, and what type of expenses you spend them on. But what it does is just a look of a point in time, whether it's the 12 months, 6 months period, or even a month, or even doing a budget for a week, or even if you're going on vacation, right? From a personal standpoint, from a national side, from a entity side, or country side, usually that's usually done over a 12-month period, right? So, from my understanding of it, that's what a budget is. It could be more detailed, but from a for the sake of the show, you know that's what I understand the budget to be. Alex, you might have a better understanding than I do. So
Yeah, so
would you?
if we come to specifically for the day, if we come to the budget of the government of Liberia,
Mhm.
which we'll be diving into, yes, as you said earlier, the budget, we see the numbers, whether by institutions or the entire budget, but there's an entire process that goes into the budget. And the budget process of Liberia is guided by laws.
Mhm.
It's not just something that they prepare, but it's guided by the law.
Mhm.
It's guided by, in fact, there's a constitutional provision that states that, I may not quote it directly, but that states that the national legislature is responsible to 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 approve the budget and things like that. So
Right.
they
Vote
are
on
to
it.
approve
Right.
revenues, they are to
Right.
approve the spending of the government and things like that. So, and these things, it stems from the Constitution. Also, there's the PFM law, the Public Financial Management law, that underpins the preparation of the budget. So
Right.
then there's a whole process that also include the budget calendar,
Yep.
the budget framework paper, and then the national budget itself, which are submitted to the national legislature. And ultimately, of course, after the national legislature passed on it through the legislative process from the
Right.
lower house to the upper house, then the president signs it.
Right.
Then now it's into law.
Right.
If
So
the
I
president
think,
sign it,
Prof.
then it goes back.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the budget, the national budget is the government's yearly plan.
Yep.
Okay, it's a annual plan for collecting.
Mhm.
Okay, for collecting. That is collecting. That's the revenue side.
Revenues. Right.
For collecting all the monies that they have to through taxes and other things, which
Right.
will go into next week or week after next, and spending, which is the expenditure side.
Expenditure process.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Part of it.
of public money, okay, to maintain a stable economy,
Yep.
to deliver public services, and also to invest in development.
In development infrastructure, that
Yes,
could be
infrastructure
healthcare.
development. Okay, yeah.
Right.
So they spend money to maintain a stable economy,
Mhm.
to deliver public services, such as social welfare services to the people, and things like education, hospital, taking care of the youth,
Mhm.
taking care of the elderly people, and taking care of the disabled, and things like that. And then also into development, such
Right.
as building of roads,
Yep.
building of buildings, public buildings, and waters and dams and electricity system, and water and sewer system and things like that. So that is what the annual budget is used for. Okay,
Perfect.
it's note that it is prepared in the Liberian government, like most countries. We have the three branches of government.
Mhm.
We have the executive branch of government, which is headed by the president and the ministers and everybody else. Then we have the legislative part of the government, which I think is the first branch, which is comprised of the representative and the senators.
Yep.
And then we have the judiciary, those people who
Make the
interpret
laws.
laws and
Right.
things like that. So
Judges,
the budget is prepared by the executive branch, of course, and then it is, of course, processed and then is sent to the legislative branch for them to pass on it, to agree or disagree. And most likely, a lot of the time, they make changes as well.
Right.
So,
that
and then,
encompasses the debate process, right? Where they
yeah,
have to debate on it to say, whatever, let's say even if they allocated, certain amount for, let's say, education, and people, it could get debated on. They could say, that amount is too high for education. We could take some and put it on it. But that process you're talking on, that's the debate process. But yeah.
Yes, that's the debate process. But before that process, that is during the process.
Mm-hmm.
It's not only during the legislative debate process, it's not only the entities, the spending entities or the revenue generating entities that come in. The citizens are also involved. That is why part of the budget process, they have something they call the Citizens Guide to the National Budget.
So let's dive a little deeper in that before we come back on it. Let's do a little how do you want to call it, tangent. That is very interesting. That's one thing I'm glad I'm here. I'm on here. As I said, I'm here to learn as well. The citizen segment, is there, when you said that the citizens guide to the understanding the budget, do they invite like the citizen to sit in on it? Is that what it is? Or like, let's go a little further into that. What does that mean? Or is it just like this pamphlet or document to put out for the citizen to understand what goes into their budget and how the process actually works?
Yeah, so when I worked for GMAP in 2006 to 2009,
right?
So the whole thing about the Open Budget Initiative, the OBI, then the whole process encompass the citizens. So if you talk about accountability and transparency,
right?
That word transparency means to see, right?
To see, open,
for everybody to see through,
right?
Yep. So as part of that transparency process, the citizens have to get involved. So they prepare the citizen guide. It's prepared. It's like a forecast into where the government intends to go next for the next year.
Yep.
Okay. It's prepared by the Ministry of Finance, and that document is sometimes 8 pages, sometimes 4 pages, sometimes it depends on what the government wants to put inside or the format shift. Sometimes it can be, but on average, it's around 10 pages. Sometimes it's 4 pages.
Right.
It's just a snapshot.
Snapshot.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Identifying defining the process. All right. What they're going to do, what month, and then just outlining the revenue, where the revenue is going to come from. But sometimes they're using historical basis and also forecasting into the future, what they think the direction they're going, and then the expenditure side. So, and then what projects, okay, the public sector investment projects, those are infrastructure development, what project, and what money is going to the counties as well.
Right.
So this document is supposed to be through the legislature or through the superintendents. It's supposed to be, passed on to the citizens as much as possible at the different government centers in the different parts of the country.
In hope that people will demand that, in hope that people will want to know what's actually in the budget, right? Like you said, you mentioned like such as like the county, right? The county allocation, right? Let's say I am a citizen within Liberia, right? And I go to whatever government, location, whatever they usually drop them off, right? And I pick it up and I saw, how those budgets, how some of the expenditures are allocated. Do the citizen in the country content with some of those expenditures in the budget to say, you know what, my county, I live in Bond County or River says, whatever, but we're only getting 100,000. How we're only getting 100,000 when we're contributing 300 and 400,000 to the government every year? Is there such process for the citizen to be, in as much as the government want to be transparent, for the citizen to say, okay, the government have put out this, educational piece of the budget for the citizen to see that and contest it and say, you know what, this is not, it doesn't make sense. How do I avoid my disagreement with that? That's one thing that I always had a question about. So I don't know, since you worked in the government, is there such thing within the process at all? Because usually what happened, when the budget comes out, right, we see it, and then that's usually the end product, right? That's the final document. After it has already been debated on and it's already been passed, it's already been signed into law. That's when usually you will see people come out shows and say, this is not fair, this is not. So given the fact there is a citizen education piece where they actually get exposed, where they create like this transparency process, do citizens have a way to voice their disagreement with certain part of the budget? And if so, how does that process work? Because that I think there will be a lot of people who wants to know, including myself, if there's any.
Yeah, so that's what you have, what we call the people's deputy. And the people's deputies are the people in the national legislature, the representatives and the senators. All right. Yes, there's a process. When, like I said, when the budget is being discussed, debated, there are press people in the hall, there are citizens in the hall.
Right.
And the citizens watch the process, and they have their time they can also speak. Right? So they are in the wings. When you go in the building, they're not in the hall where the representatives sit, but they're in the wings.
But they're listening to the process.
Yeah, they're listening, and there are times that they make their input. True, of course, that is why they make their input through their representatives.
Yep. Okay.
All right. Because the budget is debated by the representative. This is
fair enough.
Before it's cleared by the Senate.
Right.
Okay. Right. So they have a broad debate over in fact, it should be over a 2-month period. Okay.
Interesting.
Yes.
Wow.
Because by law, the budget is supposed to be submitted to the national legislature in April. Okay. And then the budget should technically most likely be approved before June 30th.
Okay.
Because the year, now we're changing now to the calendar year. So that's why we have the special budget from July to December. So that next year, 2022, we're moving from January 1 to December 31st. But currently we're moving, previously we're running from July 1st to June 30th.
June 30th.
So yes, that 60-day period, that's the window that the House of Representatives have. But prior to that, like I said, okay, that citizens guide should be, of course, that is why the national legislature, the representatives have their meetings. You remember we're talking about $30,000 given to representative, $15,000 given to representatives. And these are some of the things they're supposed to be doing. So they have their town hall meetings. They incorporate with their superintendents, all right, for those counties or the municipals, or those people at the municipal level. They're supposed to work with them to have those meetings. And part of that process, they're supposed to educate the citizens and make the citizens aware that this is there. And the enlightened one is supposed to read this documentation so that they have an idea of what is coming.
What to tell the citizens, right?
Yeah, so that the citizens can, because it's not everybody who is able to go into the debates at the House of Representatives. So these points are supposed to be taken by these representatives into. So that's why they're called the people's deputy, right? And remind you now, each of these lawmakers also are seeking their own interest for development, development funds, and stuff like that. how will the funds that are sent to the counties, how will the funds benefit the people, or how will it impact the people? If you have a concession in your area, what is the social development funds that is coming from the concession? Did they say for example, Metal or
Firestone,
oil companies,
or
Firestone and things like that.
Right.
In the agreement, did they say they're going to build a road? Did they say they're going to build a train tracks? Is that being done? The citizen has now the time to voice their opinion on those things. So yes, the citizens are supposed to be part of the process.
Right. No, thank you. I think that was a very detailed explanation. As I said, usually when these budgets comes out, we just see the end goal. For me, I usually take time to geek it out. I mean, to just read the entire 473 pages and really see how the revenues are coming from, what is actually being spent on. And usually some of the things, yes, we all have, our disagreement to say, oh yeah, I think this is too much money allocated to such administration, such, ministerial heads, or such projects, or, let's say the infrastructure, the private development infrastructure. Usually that's usually the biggest thing that I've usually contested within the budget, that we're not spending much on the infrastructure. We only spent 29 million. So usually when the budget comes out, it's the end goal. So we don't know the process that it goes through for it to come out. We don't know like the depth analysis you just gave. Most people out there, most librarians don't know that. We just argue something. We argue on something we argue on something we don't know. And we just continue to knock our head against the wall here. But I'm glad you provided that detailed analysis on that. I want us to go.
That would take us to the, if I'm not cutting out, that would take us to discussing the budget process.
Right.
If you have something else to say besides that.
No, that's what I was going to say. That's a good segue. Let's get ready into that.
The budget process is for the sake of the listening public, the budget process is over. Let's say our budget. Our year runs from. It used to run from July 1st to of June. This year, for example, to June 31st of next year.
Yeah. June 30th. Yeah.
Yeah. So June 30th. So the budget process starts earlier. It's like almost like an 8 to 9 months, or even 10 months process. So once we are operating the other budget, the next year budget process starts. So for example, if we were doing 2020 budget to 2021, yes, which we have, because we're still executing. Oh no, we're into the special budget. Yep. So for example, the 20, that's what we call it, 2020, 2021.
2021.
Okay. Right. The legislature have already approved that. It should be, like I said, it should be by the 30th. It should have been by the 30th of June 2020 for the 2020-21 budget, right? So July 1st, we start that budget, executing that budget, right?
Right.
Whilst we are executing that budget, around October, the process for 2021, 2022 budget process starts. Right. So now the budget process includes what we call the budget consultation. All right.
Right.
And then the drafting process where the budget is drafted. All right.
And then the debate.
We talk about debate. Thank you for putting it out there. Okay. So that is what. Thank you, Answer, for putting it out there. And so that's the entire process. So the budget consultation, as you can see there, the budget drafting, the budget debate, and the budget approval. All right. So, like I said, July 1st starts the fiscal year. All right. That other budget that was already being approved for this current period is already ongoing.
Right.
Okay. Then between October,
To
again,
January.
we're just giving an example. We're
Right.
saying the 2020-2021 budget, which is supposed to start July 1st, 2020 and ends July 30th, 2021, which has already ended.
Mhm.
So between October 2020 to January 2021, the government line ministries, they produce their plans on how they will spend public money to achieve government objective. Okay, so there's a whole plan. There's what we call the budget cost circular. There's a budget. The budget framework documentation is the last end. Towards the end, is submitted to the national legislature along with the budget itself. So they have something on the budget cost circular. It's a whole format that the Ministry of Finance developed. All right, and each government ministry is supposed to receive that through the Controller and Accounting General. So there's a date, when the budget cost circular is called by the Controller and Accounting General, and then that is sent to the different line ministries and agencies. And they would now, and there are different things that they're supposed to do. It's not just the numbers, right?
Right.
All right, it's just not the numbers, but they're supposed to first of all also say last year money. How did they spend it?
Yep. Review process. Right.
Yeah. In that budget called documentation, how did you spend last year money? What did you achieve for last year? You have to state that.
Were you over or were you under budget? Right.
Yeah. So when you go to the budget debate, or sometimes before they go to the national legislature, you have to go to the Ministry of Finance to argue the budget. There's a whole process, all right, that the Ministry of Finance conduct. So everybody submit their draft budget. So in that process too, you also have to tell us what you're going to do next year. Okay, this year that we're preparing a budget for, what are you going to do? What are those activities you're going to take on? What are the objectives? What's the outcome? What's the expected outcome? All those things are documented, not just the fund, not just the money. Yeah, the salary thing is the salary thing, but salary is detected by the government, because not one minister is supposed to. That's why we have the harmonized payroll.
Yeah.
Not one minister is supposed to jump up, which used to be in the past, right?
Not anymore.
Every entity will design, depends on their proximity with power and things like that. But now, technically, we're supposed to have a salary structure, right? That is detected by the civil service agency, right? So, and the Ministry of Finance. So the harmonization that was done was an attempt. I have my own qualms with it, but it was an attempt. To make sure we have a well-defined salary structure.
Yeah.
Such that when you are coming in a sweeper position, you know the salary range. When you are coming in a minister position, you know the salary range.
Yeah.
When you are coming in a director position, you know the salary range. When you are coming in an analyst position, you know the salary range. All right. So, and of course, there's a range of low, medium, and high. So it depends on when you've been with the entity, or your experience and stuff like that. So everybody in that position may not make the same money, but at least there's a range.
There's a range in which you expect your salary to be.
Yeah.
Right.
So that was what the harmonization intended to do. Even though the real objective of the harmonization was to bring the salary down from $300 and something million to $291 million, to bring it back to so that because there was complaints by the international partners that our salaries were if you have a budget of $550 million and you have 300 change, what is left for goods and services, and what is left for infrastructure development. So there was a need to bring that salary down to an acceptable level. It's still high, but it is. That was the purpose of the harmonization. But through that process, also they had established, hopefully, ranges. So, but there are other programs such as goods and services and buying of computer equipments and other fixed asset are detected by your program,
Right.
right? The
Which
program
is
you have.
those things fall within the expenditure side of the
Yeah, those
budget.
things fall
Right.
within the expenditure side. So there's a whole thing that is developed, and then what the government also does is the Ministry of Finance does when they're sending your documentation to you, they set what we call ceiling, right? Ceiling for your total. Say, okay, this entity, National Repatriation Committees, so and so, we have a ceiling for you of 200,000, and within that ceiling, we also have the ceiling for salaries. We also have the ceiling for goods and services and things like that. And you're supposed to operate within our ceiling. So that
All
is
right.
one.
So I'm glad that they actually do that. So with that being said, that means if there's a ceiling, that means there is no way any, well, so hypothetically, right? That means there is no way that, let's say, if I run the Ministry of Finance or the Ministry of Agriculture, there's no way I can go over budget if there's a budget ceiling in my that department. Would that be fair to say, right?
Well,
If there's a budget, let's say if there's a budget ceiling that within my uh, ministerial role, let's say the Ministry of Agriculture, right? That means there's no way I can go over the budget that was, allocated for that ministry. Would
well,
that would that be a fair assessment?
you gotta not necessarily the ceilings are set, but sometimes during the process the ceilings are adjusted. But now, note now, for example, the budget, the overall revenue envelope, which we
Right.
call revenue envelope, say for example, is 550 million, right? So the government budget is 550 million. Where are we going to get the money from? So the revenue we are expecting, including revenue that are coming in contingent revenue, is 550 million, for example.
Right.
All right. And if that is the case, so we have to spend all that money. So government, does its allocation or its ceiling process with
Based on
that in mind.
right.
Okay. So if the entire thing is distributed in the budget called documentation that is sent to the different ministries, and it's lacked. So if you're a Minister of Agriculture, for instance, and they say your entire ceiling is say 2 million, and you say, oh no, our program, blah blah blah, is going to be 4.5 million.
Right.
Where is that
The extra
1.5 million is coming from, or 2.5 million is coming from?
Right.
Because at the time, the Minister of Finance, the control accountant through the Minister of Finance through the Control Accountant General was sending those documentation around to all the ministries.
It was
They
based on
already quote unquote
500.
exhausted the 550 million.
Right.
So that means they have to, for lack of a better language, they have to take away from entity Y, entity Z,
to make sure that
infrastructure development,
right,
and other places to make sure that they make up that money. So you must put up a good argument, okay, in order for them to find money from somewhere else, from some other entities or some other programs.
So in that case,
yeah,
could that actually hold up the entire budget process? So let's use my case, for instance. Let's say I run the Ministry of Agriculture, right? And let's say based on that initial 550 million, right? I say my ministry, the Ministry of Agriculture will need at least 4.5. And in that 550, I'm only allocated to 2 million, right? So that other extra 2.5 million, right? Given the fact that it's not there, could my contention with that saying that I need that extra 2.5 million to hold up the budget process, the approval process, or could that be approved contingent upon what you said to say, hey, we're going to approve it at the 2 million. However, we're going to make note that if we do get any revenue above that, or we will be pulling from different, as you alluded to earlier, we will be pulling from different administration to make sure that we actually we're not guaranteeing that we're going to give you the entire 4.5 million, but we're going to make sure we get you there. But could that process
No,
actually hold up the budget
no,
process?
no,
No.
no. They don't do that. They don't do that because they don't. The Minister of Finance is not the president, and because the budget is going to be submitted to the national legislature by the president. So
Right.
ultimately, the president does not say, "Oh, Minister of Agriculture, oh, wait, yeah, we'll see what we can do, and we'll get different revenue." No, 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 no. Because during the budget process, the government had ultimately exhausted
Mm.
on where it thinks it's going to get money from. Contingent revenue is, we'll come to revenue, right? Contingent revenue, say the word contingent means if this condition is met,
Absolutely. Yep.
then we will.
We will do that. Right.
So that is also factor in, right? So it means that, for example, they send something for discussion at maybe they want to increase the gas price, and the legislature has to pass on it, and the legislature is debating, and there's nothing inside that shows that, hey, okay, or maybe they might finish this debate and they might approve it. We think we have some kind of green light that we think it will pass. I mean, they will pass. Then you can put it into contingency, say, okay, the money that we're expecting from that increase. The reason why is because that approval has not been given at the time the budget process was going on. That approval has not been given. So you can't put revenue inside, because I remember in 2009, we made a mistake, which led to a budget shortfall situation. And in another year, we put money inside, which was contingent upon something, and that something did not happen, so we got in a problem. Okay, so we put that on a contingent revenue, but that contingent revenue also is being spent, so it's being budgeted for on the expenditure side. So you can't say, oh, no. The Minister of Finance, if the Minister of Finance cannot make up the money for you through the budget, then that's it.
Hi, I have a question. This is actually for I think Anthony. Before we move on to the other parts of it, but I have a question, I think, for Anthony. He said, is it realistic that the greater portion of the budget is spent on recurrent expenditure? Is that kind of I think what he meant to say is is it realistic, or is it sustainable, like perpetually, right? If we're just continuing to go down this cycle where majority of the budget, I think almost about 54% is spent on recurrent expenditure. Is this realistic? Is this sustainable from a country that have before we came on the show, I looked at the Purple Development Agenda, which is their economic plan. With everything that is outlined in there, I don't want you to go too much into it, because I don't want this to be an assessment of do you think that is realistic for them to achieve their developmental plan, given that percentage of the budget is being spent on recurring expenditure from a realistic standpoint?
It's a laborious situation.
Right.
It's not. It's a laborious situation. It depends on any country. It depends on the amount of revenue you can generate through private sector development and private sector led growth. But be as it may, this is the situation we have in Liberia over the years. So to answer the question, yes, the bulk of our budget, which we'll go into in next 2 Saturdays.
Next shows. Right.
So, but we'll discuss the expenditure in details. But yes, to answer the question, yes, a good portion of our it's not 54%, it's more than that, of our budget is
more than that. Okay.
Recurrent expenditure.
Yeah.
Recurrent are those things that it's not, including paying for loans and things like that, and social services and monies to the counties. So yes, bulk of our budget is spent on recurrent expenditure, and just a little bit of that is spent on our development project. But that is why we have loans and grants and other things, of course, which we have to pay. So, for example, if the government wants to, that's why you heard that the government wanted to take loan to do the corridor, right?
Right.
the roads project.
Right.
Unfortunately, that didn't work out
Right.
through the Iboman loan, the
Right.
Eton loan, and things like that. It didn't work out, so we couldn't do that. But then, if we had taken our loan up front, we would have built the road, would have had some leeway, maybe 7 years to start paying back. And then when we start paying back, it enters into recurring expenditure. So we pay back what, maybe a 30 years period, things like that. So that is why government as a whole, most government, even the United States government, take loans for those kind of projects.
Right. Now,
Unfortunately,
without
we have a situation where our payment abilities and stuff like that has been suffered by previous loan situation and our current revenue.
right.
So it's a tough game. Our credit revenue.
Yeah, without going too much into that, and I think that's something that I usually look at too when I go into the budget was how much debt we have, and how much that is actually it kind of stifling our ability to borrow additional debt if we wanted to be even raise debt, whether we want to do it domestically or on the international market, right? The amount of debt we carry right now within our budget is huge. It's about half of the GDP that we have, right? We have $1.5 billion in debt. Our GDP is just, I think, $3.1 billion, right? So with that amount of debt, if you want to, even if you wanted to raise money on domestically within the Liberian population to say, hey, you know what, we're trying to raise money with the Mboma loan deal, and that didn't work. You know what, we don't want to go on the international market anymore. Let's try raising that within the country here domestically by issuing bonds. I don't think it you know it doesn't give you leverage to do that. It doesn't give you leverage to do that. The reason being because with that amount of debt on your hand, how will you be able to service the other debt that you want to take on? So I agree with you on that. It kind of it's like we're in this catch 22, where we can not just catch 22. We just cannot do it. We can't unless we go into a situation where we say, we consolidate the debt that we currently have. Let's, the average interest on that right now is about 17%, right? That's the average. That means some interest rate are low, some are even higher than that, right? Now, if we are able to consolidate that debt, right, that 1.5, we borrow money is very cheap, relatively cheap right now, right? Given that we had the credit rating to do that, right? We would have been able to borrow money at a lower rate, let's say maybe 10% or even 7%, and pay back that existing debt, right? And be able to maybe within the next 3, 4, 5 years to be able to raise more money either domestically or on the international market. But that's in a nutshell, that's some of the things that's withholding the it's not doing them justice. If they wanted to take on any project, those are some of the reasons why they're being they can raise money on an international market or domestically. But I just wanted to throw that out there before. I know we will go into the budget, in terms of the expenditure, the revenues and the expenditure, and the debt. We will even have part of it where we talk about the debt. But I just wanted to throw that in there. Sorry, I think I may have cut you off. So I think we were on the approval part, the approval segment, right? Part of it, right?
So we're talking about the process. We're done with consultation, and we're talking about the drafting process. And then once the government, the Ministry of Finance has collected all the different budgets and there are time periods for these things. So
right.
So once that is done, it doesn't mean that they stick to the time, but sometimes there's a problem. So then the Ministry of Finance has its own debate where people who have reasons to want more money, or maybe people who have reason not to want more money, adjustments are made during the process, and then once that process is finalized,
Right.
it is submitted to the president, who then in fact before then the budget framework paper,
Hmm.
which outline is sometimes a 50-page document.
Right.
It's a draft. I mean, I think last year there was a draft. Usually, as a final document, it's toyed around, it's played around with, changes
Right.
are made, and finally it's submitted. But I think last year there was a draft to that before the final, which
Yeah.
was a good thing. So that is sometimes it's a 66-page, 70-page document
Hmm.
that is done. It's attached. The budget is attached to it. It's submitted through. So once that is done, everybody read it. It's circulated. Everybody read that. Then it's sent to the president for his own review,
Hmm.
and then now he submits it to the national legislature for that debate. Normally, the president is supposed to submit that budget, but before that time, before the president submit it, by April 15th,
Hmm.
there is a cabinet discussion on the budget.
Hmm.
So the budget should be presented to the cabinet by April 15th.
Right.
So the cabinet, the president, they discuss it in a room, and then so that by April 30th, the president writes a letter
Right.
submitting the budget along with the budget framework
Hmm.
to the national legislature. That is by. So once you see that it passed April 30th, then there's a delay. Okay, and delays happen for different reasons. Okay,
Right.
and like I said before, so between that time, the legislature from May 1
Hmm.
to say maybe May 30th or May or June 15th, thereabout, the legislature for 1.5 months, the legislature is supposed to finish with its part and a consent, but sometimes, a lot of the times, the legislature also, they always, I used to hear say, oh, the legislature now found some kind of money. They're always finding money. I don't know where they can find 2 million from. But that is why
Right.
the discussion of the budget, the people's involvement, the representative going out to the people, that
Makes
some of
sense.
those things can lead to some of those monies they can be finding. So I was just playing
Right.
fun with it to ignite some laughter. But that is why they engage their people, and once they
Right.
engage the people, they can find some of those things. Sometimes they call some of the entities. They can
Right.
call water and sewer, especially the revenue generating entity. They can call the NPA. They can call different organizations to come and talk. And through that process, they can what do you call it? They can,
All right, so let's leave it on that. Let's take a little break. Then after that, I think we have comments from the audience, and then we'll answer the comments. We'll answer the questions. We'll read the comments, answer whatever questions, or take whatever feedback they have for us, and then after that, we'll go into the next portion of it.
Okay.
All right.
At Focus on Liberia, we discuss everything Liberia, from education to politics, arts and culture, entertainment. At Focus on Liberia, we discuss everything Liberia, from education to politics.
Again, welcome back to Focus on Liberia, the marketplace where we talk everything finance and economics. If you're just joining us, my name is Gabriel Carter. My co-host is Alex Cuffy. Today we're digging deep into the budget. We've just going through the process. Usually when the budget come out, we see the end product, right? But we don't know the processes that happen before we get the end product. So today we took upon the liberty to go upon not go upon, to talk about the budget, to talk about the processes that makes up that result in the budget. So again, welcome, and welcome to Focus on Marketplace, and great to be with you, Alex.
Yes, sir.
All
So,
right.
so
Go ahead. Did you want to say something?
Yeah. So we're coming to the other part after that budget. But the budget, the component of the budget, looking at just briefly, we'll discuss that next Saturday. On the revenue side, we'll deeper into the revenue, and then the following Saturday we'll deeper into the expenditure side. But the revenue side has the tax revenue and the non-tax revenue. Okay, so the tax revenue comprises of, that is the taxes they collect in the country. So
all right, would you mind let's read the comments first, and then then you take us away into that, and we can go into that.
Okay, read the comments then.
Yeah. Let's take some comments from the audience. So this is, I think Jimmy is actually a regular here. He said, Jesus, is what percentage of the budget, I think he meant to say, what percentage of the budget is earmarked for debt servicing? That's a great question. Is there a target amount for health and education? After salaries, what does the government consider priority in budget forecasting? Actually, leave that on. That is a very good question. Earmark. Education. Okay, perfect. Let's take the next one. I think he meant to say, I usually hear people say the budget is a political tool that direct the president agenda for the country. Why, if the budget lines are diverted against the agenda-based appropriation? I don't think I understand that last question, but I think what if? Okay.
He's trying to talk about I think he's trying to talk about what is directed towards the achievement of the proper agenda. I think.
Right. Great question. How do you say Placo? Jimmy again. Has the government analyzed revenue loss? How does it? Man, I think the guy's probably somewhere typing too fast. How does it have plan to address the losses? Okay.
So
any more? Probably not. I think that's probably the last question. Okay. There's another one. This same person. Our budget envelope is small and mostly expended on salary. Spend on salary. Okay, spend on salary, right? But the house to allocate money to themselves instead of directing the same healthcare, instead of directing same to the healthcare in their district. I think he meant the house allocate money to themselves instead of directing that money towards the healthcare. But I think those are great questions. Alex, Anthony, do we have any more?
No, that's it.
That's
it. Okay. I think we should address those questions or comments before then we segue into the next portion of it.
So let go over. So we're talking about the revenue side and the expenditure side, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So we talk about revenue side comprises of tax revenue, non-tax revenue. Okay, so and of course, what we get from our external partners through grants and other things. So,
right.
For our tax revenue, we get property income, right? We get what we call the income and profit tax. So all the income taxes we pay as individuals,
right,
and
whether corporate or income.
Yeah, And then all the taxes that the companies, the different companies that are, that's what we call the profit tax.
Right.
All right. And then we also have what we call the goods and services tax.
Yep.
All right. I think it's 10% now on every time you buy something, you pay something to the government.
Right.
Okay. Every time you rent a building, you pay, the landlord is supposed to pay some 10% or so on the goods and services side. Then we have the property. If you own property in the country, if you own land, whether something is on the land or not, you pay tax on that. And then we also have international trade, so you pay taxes on the international trade as well. So then other taxes that are some. Then the non-tax income, property income, of course, things like if you own a property or other things you pay. Then administrative fees, those like in the court building, the fines, the penalty, the forfeiture, all that money the police will supposed to collect, giving tickets.
Right, like the ticket in the city of Monrovia or other stuff.
So the court, if you go to court, the court fine you $20,000 payback and other different things. Yeah, other and so all those things we do in our country, like the police supposed to generate money. Monrovia City Corporation people that are in the streets supposed to generate money for the government, because instead of giving the guy ticket, you take $5 or $10 from the guy, put in your pocket. You're denying the government of getting its revenue. So all those things are money. Then on the expenditure side, that's what people are interested in. On the expenditure side, we have the compensation, which is the salaries, right? And I don't want to go into that, but that is a good part of it. Then we have what we call the goods and services. We also have the assets that we buy, and we also have the subsidies and things that we give to schools and other things, private schools and those people. Then the social benefits that we give for retirement for people that are working with the government that retired. Then we have the liability side, which is part of the recurring expenditure.
Right.
Both the domestic people that we owe to, we got to pay them, and our foreign debt, we got to service our foreign debt. And now, in previous year, we didn't have COVID. Now we have COVID response, which has added to the budget since COVID started in 2020. So all that is part of it. So next Saturday we will go deeper into the revenue side, and then the following Saturday after that we'll go into the expenditure side. Then the other Saturday, third Saturday, we now go into budget comparison, budget performance, and stuff like that. We are doing this because there has to be the discussion. Somebody put a comment there talking about the could have, the would have, the should have. Yes, the could have, the should have, the would have. But we're doing this because we want to educate the public. And this kind of discussion, provide the citizens with the ammunition to discuss the budget, the understanding to discuss the budget.
Right.
We're looking at the future. If it was not done yesterday, it's not done today. We are hoping that with good governance going forward, it can be done.
Right.
So we need to educate the people to understand. So that is why we're taking the time and liberty to do this. So let's go to the other questions if you need.
So I think one of the questions that was asked was, I think you answered one of them, which is how much it's whether they do allocate certain amount.
Let me break you a little bit. Somebody talk about the percentage of the budget that is
debt service
on debt. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So let me break it down to make it easy. All right. And I will break it down from, if you know the arithmetic, right? So let's say 500. So we're talking about.
Do you want to do it domestic and international, but anyway, go ahead.
No, if you're talking about percentage, to answer the question directly, right? And then I will break it down.
Right.
For example, in our budget, so we got to take it in period of time because it's not the same every time. But it hovers between 10% to 15%. In the 2019-2020 budget, our debt servicing was 12.4%
Mm-hmm.
of the overall budget.
Yeah.
Okay, which was $51 million.
Mm-hmm.
$51 million projected to be spent on debt servicing,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that comprises of both domestic and
international.
what? And foreign debt.
Right.
Okay? Foreign debt being 35.95 million.
Right.
So the difference between 35.95, which is almost like 36,
Mm-hmm.
take that from 51
And you get your
million,
domestic.
you will get the domestic debt.
Right.
And all that made up 12.4%.
Right.
So if the overall budget was 507 million,
Right.
570 million, you should know that 12%, 12.5%
Will be allocated.
will be that portion,
Right.
which, of course, if you come to compensation, salaries and compensation, of course, in 2019, 2020, it was about 61%.
Mm.
Okay? So our salaries made up the biggest portion. Compensation for employees, government employees, make up the biggest portion, which stood at $297 million in the budget of 2019, 2020,
Right.
representing 60.5%. I just rounded it up to 61%, but it's actually 60.5%. So that is the goods and services is what the people use now to run the different ministries and agencies. Okay, buying printer here, buying sheets, paying light bill, paying water bill, all the things that are there to having meetings, all the things that are there to run the ministry and agency was just 72 million. So
Right.
you can see that salary is 297 million.
That is a
Whereas goods to run the
huge amount.
ministry is
Right.
72 million, which is 14.7%. Okay.
Jesus. Okay.
So that, so to answer that question, that's it. But we'll go into details on the expenditure side in two Saturdays.
There's one thing you mentioned that I wanted to, I've always thought that, but I've always been puzzled because, as I said, usually when we get the budget, we don't see, what makes up, the, what comprises where the sources of revenue comes from, right? We know it is actually they get money from tax, right? One thing that I've always been curious about, whether we do pay property tax in Liberia, but you being somebody who worked in the government, you actually confirmed that we do pay property taxes, right? Every time I go to Liberia, right,
Mm-hmm.
there's this, like, I usually take it upon myself to look at properties. Like, some properties are abandoned, like specifically in Central Monrovia, or they're in these dilapidated condition that it seems like nobody's taking care of them. If we do pay property taxes, whether on actual structures that are erected or land, how? I mean, this is a personal question. How is that being assessed? How do they even know that this person own this property, and how does that get assessed on those properties? Because if we do, that means there's a mess. That means our revenues shouldn't even be around 570 million. I mean, we should be closer. We should be just the property taxes alone should be pushing up around that area. So how do you think that is actually being assessed on the on those properties, and whether land or actual structures and
So the Liberia Revenue Authority has a mechanism. Okay, it's I can talk around that. I
Right.
may not talk in the details, but they have a mechanism. For example, if you have a land, there's a valuation, and that valuation process has to do with
assessment through the they have
yeah. There's a formula that they use to
right.
do your assessment, whether it's 1 lot, 1 acre, or 2 lots. So it's based on that you're assessed. So they have what we call it after they do that. Sometimes people go there to do the inspection, so they send the assessors there to do that, and then you have the assessed value, and then they're supposed to give you an invoice before it's due. On your building, they also do the assessment of the building, right? Based on this market value or the value that you, for example, if you went for a bank loan, right? And you put the value of the house down on the paper to get plenty of money, the LRA could use that as the value of your house. Okay,
So they use those systems as well.
Yeah, because sometimes people can undervalue their house, but there are things, or maybe when you file they're supposed to declare your asset. Okay, when you're appointed by the minister, by the president, you're supposed to declare your asset. So you put the value of your assets there. So the building, but they have a process where evaluators could go to the site to value your house. But
now this has to be a one-time valuation, right? Let's say
no, it's an
ongoing every year.
It's an annual thing. Yes, it's an annual.
Interesting.
Yeah,
but
I think in every country you pay. In the US you pay annual.
Yeah, I know. That's what I thought. I thought every country we pay. Every year you get. If you have property, they assess taxes on it every year. You pay to your respective city or county or town, whatever it is, and that's on a yearly basis. And every time I go to Liberia, I just look at these, especially Central Monrovia. There is these buildings that I think nobody's taking care of. Usually, I want to inquire about the owners to see if I can purchase them or whatever. But usually then I think, is this government even collecting revenues on it? Tax revenue on it? Because if they were, nobody will be able to abandon their property, because if you abandon it, there would be so much tax lien on it from the government that they would take it and be able to resell those property. But you don't see any of those anywhere. So that was one thing that I've always been curious about, and that's what I decided.
That we can discuss details on the revenue side of things, the challenges with, and maybe like we said, we'll be bringing guests. Maybe we can bring somebody from the LRA or somebody that's close to the LRA or who was there before, who has worked there before. We can bring them on to kind of look at some of the challenges on the revenue side of things.
So I know
let's go to the questions again. At least I answer one of the questions or two of the questions. Answer it. Can you put those questions back, so that we can wrap up this thing? Is after.
Yeah, I think we're well over the hour mark. Anthony, do we have any more questions? I think one of the questions, I think you answered it regarding how much was actually spent on for debt service.
So I answered the question. That's Jimmy Eastman who asked that question. I'm looking at the question. Somebody said, I usually hear people say the budget is a political tool that directs the president's agenda for the country. That's the next. Why, if the budget line are diverted against his agenda based appropriation?
You cannot.
That is a question whether somebody's no. That is why the president the president gets involved in the budget process, because by April 15, the budget is submitted to the cabinet, and the president, chairs the cabinet meetings. So the president is privy to the minister of finance. Every minister, note that every minister is performing a function that is of the president, because of the executive. So on behalf of the president, the minister of finance is acting. So the minister of finance is in constant communication, consultation with the president. So when a cabinet is discussing the budget, of course, the president submits the budget to the national legislature. So the president would not submit something to the national legislature that he will not sign a letter that something that he is not privy to. And from my personal experience, the president is hands-on on that as well. So yes, in the execution process, I don't think somebody can divert the budget against the president's agenda, right? The budget is set, so funds based on programs. But if things happen, sometimes the president himself, can direct some fundings which to be applied to certain unforeseen circumstances, like we didn't plan for guinea worm in Banga, in
Right.
Bong County, for example.
Right.
If it happens, the president has to direct money there.
Right.
So that money has to come from somewhere. The Minister of Finance have to reprogram something.
Right.
Or if it calls for budget changes, then it has to go back to the process through the national legislature.
Yeah.
So I don't think it worked that somebody will take money from against the president's agenda like that.
Yeah.
Then
No, I agree with you, because I think that would if you would do it, then that would be if whoever that minister who would actually attempt that would be so kind of like a suicide that could get you terminated, because that you would technically be working against the president.
Yeah, also, Gabriel, there's during the execution of the budget, which will come to an expenditure side, there is an allotment process.
Right.
So, and every money that is sent to you has to be approved by the finance ministry. It has to come from the available funds from the consolidated account.
Right.
And the Minister of Finance through the Controller Accountant General has a signature to that account.
Right.
So it's based on, even to get your salary, you have to allocate. Right. It has to be a monthly allocation or quarterly allocation, and it has to be approved. So you go for your allocation sheet, then you prepare the thing, you send it back to the Minister of Finance. So it's a whole process. So nobody is going to, for example, if you have travel budget of 25, I remember, right? Me personally, when I was heading the FIU, I remember I had a budget of, yes, I had an entity, for example, who were entitled to travel business class. Mm-hmm. So this whole noise about business class ticket and all that, it brings back to mind. So we were supposed to travel, but when I look at my budget, my friend Gabriel, right? I look at this budget, we had travels to do to represent the country. So if I had taken business class, and something people joke me about, joke me in the ministry. So my God, Chief, you supposed to travel business class, you traveling business class. I said, no, then my budget is small. Right. If I travel business class, then we'll not travel again. So let me go with my little economic class so that I can safeguard my budget for me and other people to travel so that we can achieve our objective for the remainder of the year. Yeah. Okay. The reason is, if I had gone 2 business class or 3 business class, the money will finish. Yeah. And that means we can go again. But then at that point, that for each time you spend out of that 25 million, if you spend 2,005, they bring the what left there is 18,500 or 17,500. Yeah. The next time you go, and that travel includes the ticket, the per diem, the days. If you spend all that money on just one traffic and travel, your money is done. Yep. So nobody can go there and take money that they're not supposed to take like that. No, there's a process involved. Okay, for every time you do something, you have to send it to the Ministry of Finance. They have to approve it before you get it. Sometimes it can delay that to the extent that your travel coming and it's tough, right? Yeah,
I think that is I think we actually we don't give too much. The Ministry of Finance does have a very powerful role into how everything is ran, and I don't think sometimes we take that into consideration, but they do. They have a very important role in this whole how the country is ran. If you're saying that everything that goes that you do has to get approved by them, that gives them a lot of power besides the president.
I'm not going to y'all give somebody let's go to the question, my man. Somebody asked a question, very interesting question. What is the percentage of stealing of that of the actual collection of taxes?
What was the question?
What is the percentage of the stealing? What's the percentage of stealing to that of actual collection of taxes?
Yeah. Here's the question on the screen.
I've seen it. So let's go to the next one. Placo Apple. Our budget envelope is. No, let's go to this. The second one. Jimmy Eastman says, has government analyzed revenue loss? How does it have planned to address these losses? Jimmy, this is we attempt to bring somebody in at the revenue side from the Liberia Revenue Authority to how to deal with revenue loss. So we may not be quorum with that kind of detail.
Right. I think what he's trying to find out whether there's it's usually in some years you will have budget surplus or budget deficit. In the case there's a deficit, how does the government deal with that? I think that
So,
was the question that he was trying to ask here.
okay, thank you for
Right.
that. So, say for example, if those are exogenous things happen if the government plan to spend, I mean, to collect 500 million, and they don't collect 500 million. They rather collect 450 or 400 million. On the flip side, if the government collects more, right?
hmm
So there's something they call supplemental budgeting, right?
hmm
So if the government have that kind of shortfall, for example, in revenue collection, then they will do supplemental budgeting on the downside, where they will be reducing, of course, to that extent,
Right.
because you're talking about collecting 550 million versus they collected 500, 450. That's 100 million.
Right.
So a lot of things have to be adjusted.
Right.
But that is why they periodically, monthly or quarterly, they have to do the analysis that, okay, this is the amount of revenue we collect. This is what is coming down. This is the expenditure we are spending so far. This is what is coming down. So they can do supplementary budget both on the high side and on the low side. You remember, believe it or not, the government said that they had some unspent cash of $10 million the other time. So that
Mhm.
money was refactored into the other year budget and it was taken to the legislature for approval. Okay.
I want to make a comment on that before we look into wrapping up here, which I think, in as much that I think I heard that statement, which 10 million, that means there was a budget surplus, right?
Mhm.
And it kind of, you know, give credits into the bigger sense of why we are where we are, right? If you have a budget surplus, right? Let's say hypothetically, what now it wasn't hypothetical. In a case where they alluded that we did, right? They stated that we did. That's 10 million, right?
Mhm.
Would you have, if you were somebody in the Ministry of Finance, would you have put that money somewhere, right? Let's say save it, right? And operate from scratch, right? It's as opposed to putting that into the next budget, right? Would you have, because that's like let me just make it simple. That's like me making, $130,000 a year, right? And let's say I only spend 120, right? And I have
Gabriel,
extra 10.
there was a
What I
big
would
debate.
do, I would save that 10, right? I was so from a logical, reasonable standpoint, I would save that 10 and say, you know what, I didn't spend that much last year. I would save that 10 and not go into say, you know what, I was just going to factor it into my next thing. That may not be a logical comparison, but I think that's what's supposed to happen. You save that 10 million, you don't use it, but instead of throwing it into the next year budget, that's how you build budget surpluses that will and now allow you to do other bigger things as opposed to, saying, hey, I get extra money, let me go do this, let me go do this. Let's see. Would you, from your understanding of it, would that have been something that you would have recommend, or do
Yeah,
you agree with what that process?
okay, in the meantime, Answer, can you put the Placo Apple? Our budget envelope is small and mostly expand on salary. Can you put that question on? But yeah, I mean, Gabriel, that issue is a whole debate around it, as to whether there was whether it was actually because the institution during the corona period, they were not performing, so most people were home, so monies were not spent, so that actually led to that amount, or whether
Right,
it was a calculation of the difference between some loan, like
right.
the former Minister of Finance talked about. So there was a whole lot of debate around that monies. When we come to the revenue side, we'll give
We'll
space for
we'll get into it.
you.
Okay. I think the comments is what is it? Placo? Placo
Yeah,
is I hope I'm saying that right.
our budget
Uh,
envelope. Mhm.
right.
Can you want to read it?
Yeah, I'll read it. Our budget, I think I read this earlier. Our budget envelope is small and mostly expand to salaries, right? Which is true. But the house allot money to themselves instead of directing the same to healthcare in their district. It's sad, right? I think what he's mean is that, there is, more money going to a salary as opposed to, you know, things that could be like, directing money to healthcare and other important uh, services. I think that was what the question was asking or stating.
Yeah, like we said, our budget, 60% of our budget goes to salaries. And what the last part of the questions is alluding to the fact that the legislature paid more money. So I think recently, the legislature were making more than that. People argue about 15,000 and things like that, but as per the last harmonized budget, at least the legislatures are making on gross, they're making about $10,000, and when they take out taxes, it's about $7,000 and change. So there was a debate also that so these figures were flagged by some of them were flagged by some of the representatives and the senators. There was a debate on one of the online radio station. What's his name? The senator, the light.
Right. You're a bit low. You want to
the senator, the light, the most radical candidate senator. Darius Dillon disclosed the salaries. There are other senators that disclose their salary as well. So at least we know that they are earning gross of 10,000 change with after taxes. They were around 9,000. I mean 7,000 change. So that is what I heard on there. So yeah, salaries in general is about 60% of our budget, so it's high. Okay. So then James Davis, president and official traveling expenses is higher than even salaries of civil servant.
The thing we didn't want to go into, these people are pushing us into it to talk about them.
But that's the reality. We got to talk about the budget.
Right. I agree. Right.
Yeah, I think the budget lines are defined for every organ of the government. The president's office is one organ through the Minister of State, but the president also has a budget line there. So sometimes it's concerning with the travel and things like that. We've heard all the debates about the use of a private jet versus the use of commercial plane, the cost associated with that, whether that is being disclosed and things like that. So yes, it's a challenge that I know in previous governments, previous presidents travel with, except the need be, they travel private jet or but most of the time they travel commercial planes. But what we see today is we're traveling on private jet more and commercial plane, which it has a cost associated. Even if the plane was not purchased by the country, it has a cost associated. Of course,
it does. Yeah.
I don't think if I borrow my car to you, Gabriel, if you come to town, I borrow my car to you for a week or two, I don't think I will put gas inside for you.
Right.
I don't think if you go on the road and a tire jump or you're not wait for me on the highway.
Yeah, I have to fix that.
Car.
Right.
Gas finish from the car, you're not telling me say, when the weapon water finish, you're not telling me say, or if you want to do something cool and you want to hire a driver to drive that car on your behalf, which is in this case is a pilot, you expect me to pay the pilot. So there's a cost associated with, even if we're not paying for the cost of the plane, there's cost associated with those travels, which I think we could have cut down on travel costs if we had used commercial plane to a large extent. For example, going from Monrovia to Accra, I mean, you can have Air Kenya Airways business class and get there. It's just less than an hour of flight. So it's concerning. So that is something that. What is the percentage of student know? I don't know.
I think that's a more indicting kind of a question on the current administration. That we cannot factor. That we don't know that, and that's I mean that would be that's in a broader sense. I think that is asking in terms of the level of corruption. Um, we can't answer that. It's not factored in the budget. We don't know that. If there was a way to quantify that, I'm sure we would have talked about it. But unfortunately, we can't. I can. Alex, I don't know about you. Maybe you want to take a stab at it.
On what?
On the question, the percentage of stealing.
Yeah, no. I mean, the guy is right. It's just you're talking about, and maybe we can discuss this and close on that because we've way past.
Right. Yes, please. Yeah.
There are so many questions. We will analyze them and maybe answer some of them in our next Saturdays. So when he talk about what is the percentage of the stealing? It puts into mind corruption as a whole,
right?
And that's why I want to close on this. Corruption has he's talking about percentage of stealing, but it's a whole process of corruption. It's the whole process of it has to do with impunity. It has to do with rule of law. You know, so the corruption impedes development. Corruption impedes revenue generation. We talk about basic things like the fines and the things that are collected by government. Those are monies. And if people are putting these monies in their pocket, collecting it and putting the money in their pocket, it's not going into the revenue envelope. If we're not harnessing on our the different taxes we are supposed to receive, if we're not so as a result, there's a temptation to increase things like import duties and other things because we try to generate the revenue to stay within the 500 million plus revenue envelope. So we tend to be beating the loyal people more. That is through import duties and other things, which we're supposed to be bringing down so that we encourage more people to come. The more the merrier. And so the corruption is difficult. Then on the expenditure side, when people spend, like he mentioned the word stealing, and again, I'm not pointing to a particular government. This has been a systemic problem.
It is, yeah,
with Liberia from Judgment Day. So, so it impedes. So one of the things that, in my mind, as a person for Liberia, the first thing, that's why I tell people when we have a debate. They talk about healthcare, they talk about this, they talk about that. They say, seek ye first the kingdom of God, and these things shall be added unto you. Seek ye first to reduce corruption.
And then everything else will benefit from that.
Seek ye first to minimize impunity by implementing the rule of law to the fullest. And once you can reduce corruption or minimize it to the bare minimum, so that it goes under the table. We're not saying you can eradicate corruption. Even in the great countries of the world, there's corruption.
Yeah.
But it should be put under the table in the extent that you won't see people go to a place to get a service, somebody uprightly asking you for money. Yeah. Uprightly. It has to be done the way it's so secret that nobody will even know that you're even asking for money. And the system will be so that you'll even discourage you for asking.
Exactly.
So, corruption has to be fought. Impunity is so much that people go free when they do stuff. So when people are punished, when the law is applied, then people get afraid. You know why in other countries people get afraid to do certain things? Because they know the consequences. But in our country, we go scot-free. So, hey, if John did it, that's what we call in the corruption tree, we call rationalization. But John did it, nothing happened to him, but Peter doing it, they're doing the same thing, they did it last government, so we can do the same thing. So, so what he's talking is a greater question that within the fabric of our nation that needs to be
our society.
Yeah, that needs to be put away. And once you do that, I'm sure you will see the revenue envelope going, because when the rule of law is being applied to the latter, all right. I want to Cabo Verde.
Cape Verde, yeah.
Cape Verde, yeah.
Yeah.
We call it Cabo Verde, right?
Yeah.
And my friend, even taxi drivers understand that they are not supposed to extort from you or take something from you. I forgot something in the car. The guy brought it back to my hotel. Because the country is a land, it's an island.
Yeah.
You know what they thrive on? They thrive on tourism.
Yeah. So you can't.
So they have to make sure that that's where they're getting their money from. That they have to make sure that they encourage people to come from the country. So if taxi driver starts stealing from people, those things can discourage people from coming.
Yep.
So it is so strict that taxi driver will bring my item back to me. Taxi driver will give him my change. He will not try to take it from me. I try to give him a tip. He said, he want it.
Wow.
Yes. So those are the things that we're talking about. But again, we got to close.
Yeah. Contrary to that, let me give you a 1 minute incident that happened to me in Liberia. Contrary to what you just said in Cape Verde, I had the same experience too in Cuba. In Cuba, you go, even the police don't carry a gun. If somebody steals something from you, all you got to do is make this statement to the police. That if it was in a house, it will reappear back in the house, right? Contrary to that, in Liberia, I was just there 2 weeks ago, right? Usually, you know about the traffic in Liberia. No, I'm not dead in the country. I just want to make two comparisons, as you said. If we make certain things in the behind, it won't add to this corruption disease that is eating us up, right? It's basic thing, right? Usually there's traffic. Every time I go in Liberia, any country I go into, I always get up early in the morning to run. But this time, I woke up, I went running, I woke up late, so I didn't want to deal with the traffic taking a car. So I said, let me get on the bike. I got on the bike, we're going through Central Monrovia. There, without a blink, before the guy could even put me down, there was a police guy in front of him, just guy in front of me. I had a backpack on my back, just a backpack on my back on the bike. He stopped us. The first thing he did, he took the key from the bike and just held it in his hand. So I'm confused. I'm on the bike. I'm on the bike. I'm confused. I'm confused, right? I'm like, hey, so I'm asking the kid. I'm already there where I need to go. I just need to get off the bike. So, but I'm confused that he took the kid's key, right? So I asked him, hey, what happened? Why are you taking the key? He said, oh, my man, I need something, right? Not to me, but to the kid, right? And he asked, he justified that. I just got here. Look in my hand. See what I got. See, I just got here on my shirt. See what I got in my hand. So the kid said, how much you need? He said, I need $100. So as the kid was negotiating with him, he wanted $100. The kid was trying to give him $60. So in there, I know if that didn't happen, he would have taken the kid's bike. So I just gave him the difference. The kid gave him 60. I just gave him the other 40, and he left from there. But the thing that upset me was the fact that he told the justification was that, look, I just got here. I haven't made any money. It's not that the kid broke any law or did something, that endangered himself or other passenger or other people, right? So it speaks to the broader sense of what you were saying, that if we net these little things, we control for the smaller things, it will impact the bigger things, which will be, not alleviating corruption, but actually minimize it to the point where from a revenue standpoint, it will impact everything like this, impact that will benefit everything else. I just wanted to say that before we close. I'm not dirty. I'm not dirty or tension it. We give two analogy, right?
Yeah, I think Sam Waller was putting the question in context. He was saying that how much is lost to corruption.
Right. I mean, we can't quantify that.
Yeah, I think that is what we try to discuss.
Right. We can't quantify it, but in a sense, we know that it has a bigger impact in terms of how the country develop, what type of, how much revenue it collects at the end of the year. But I just wanted to leave that out. I know we need to close.
Okay, we gotta cut it quick at this time.
Yeah. Do you want to give a closing statement?
Yeah, we would. I mean, I just want to close by saying once again that this show is brought to you through the kind courtesy of Focus on Liberia in collaboration with Allen Bernard International Consulting Business, which I had. Again, that is why we try to be careful in the whole government stuff, but
Right.
we discussed the issues on the fair view. I mean, on the fair basis, without trying to criticize or be for government or injure somebody's reputation and things like that. Because I stand here representing my company, so I wouldn't want my company to be smelled into.
Absolutely.
Else. But again, to highlight, next week we'll continue on next Saturday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll continue on the revenue segment of the budget. The following, we will delve into expenditure, and then the third Saturday we will delve into the actuality, the budget performance and stuff like that. Next, we will try to bring somebody who is close to the revenue side of things and stuff like that. And every Saturday we'll try to do that. Thank you, and have a good day.
All right, thank you. Again, it was a pleasure. Just same time next Saturday, 3 o'clock. If you just take a Saturday, take 1 hour out of your time. We'll try to keep it to an hour next time. Take an hour, join us, bring your questions. As you heard from Alex, we will be talking about the revenue side, about the budget. We will have a guest. Bring your questions. We always want this to be an interactive show. So, again, for those who asked questions that we were able to answer, join us again. If we didn't answer your question, we will try to review it and, first thing, maybe at the beginning of the show, answer your questions during the next segment. But
I just laughing because somebody said there should be a line item for corruption in the budget. Bye.
Bye. Thank you guys for joining us, and it's been a pleasure spending time with you. Thank you.
All right.
We are Liberia. Liberia is our home. Liberia people. Liberia.